morning, and thanks for coming out on this very cold day. The Maine Fair Trade Campaign is a coalition of labor, environmental, faith, and social justice groups working together for fair trade and an economy that's sustainable and democratic. Currently, our focus is on the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. We were part, and many of you were part, of the very successful worldwide coalition that worked for many years that ended in the successful removal of the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Thank you for anything you did toward that end. But we knew then and we know now that that was not the final effort in moving us to a fair trade direction and a fair trade economy. The North American Free Trade Agreement contains in it some of the things that would have gotten worse with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and there are people involved in the current negotiations who believe that parts of the Trans-Pacific Partnership should be incorporated into the new NAFTA. So our mission is to make sure that people understand what is in the agreement, that with all the array of issues that all of us are working on now, we don't lose track of this one, because this is the one that's being used increasingly not just to regulate trade, but to turn over the rules that govern the economy in the world to the will of corporations. Contained in these agreements is what's called investor-state dispute settlement mechanisms, ISDS. You've probably heard about them in the news. These parts of these agreements grant special rights to corporations to sue governments, whether that be federal, state, or local governments, whose activities they feel violate their rights under the agreement. This can mean that if environmental legislation is passed disallowing companies from doing certain things, that they will sue saying they are being discriminated against by not being allowed to profit in the way they want. And they can sue, their case will be heard privately by a tribunal of 3 attorneys. The decisions do not have to be based on precedent, and they do not even have to tell us what their reasoning is for how they decided. That's what's contained in these agreements. That's what has gotten stronger and broader with each successive agreement. That's what we must not let happen with the North American Free Trade Agreement. Our current United States Trade Representative, Robert Lighthizer, is actually opposed to the ISDS. But from what I can tell, he's a bit of a lone horse in the administration in that effort, so we don't know how long he'll stand fast in that position. It's also interesting in these negotiations that Canada has made several moves to try to force the U.S. to improve our labor standards, because in the 3 countries that make up NAFTA, our labor standards actually drag down theirs. So that's another interesting twist in these particular negotiations. So we're working, and we invite you in your work also to stand up with us to continue to push for a trade agreement that actually works for people, that actually protects the planet, and that is based on those kinds of goals and that kind of economy, and not just on the movement of capital around the world. You've heard a lot today about water, and so just as an example, I'll tell you that one of the things these agreements can have to do with water is that they can interfere with our legislature's right to either protect our water, or should they decide to declare water a public good, they could be sued under some of these agreements for removing that from the private sector if a corporation felt that that was discriminating against them from being able to bid on purchase, sale, development, what have you, of water. So, and those are decisions that our legislature will be making. So even though NAFTA is a national issue, it has a lot of bearing and needs to be understood by our elected state representatives, as well as our county, local, and municipal legislators. So thanks for your attention. Thanks again for coming out today. I encourage you to stop back at our table for this little fact sheet about NAFTA. We have some other things. And also, we're very excited that on March 27th coming up will be our annual meeting, and our keynote speaker will be David Bacon, who's done a lot of documentation of the impact of NAFTA down around the Mexican-US border and how that's actually affecting people. So thank you for your attention, your interest, and your commitment.